Well, hello everyone, and you are joining Unity of Chautauqua this Wednesday evening. And just to give you a little background about Unity, this is the first time that you have ever been with us, maybe you're joining us on Facebook Live, maybe you're going to look at our YouTube channel later or send it to someone else. I encourage you to do that. To learn more about us and Unity, you can go to unity.org, or to learn about Unity of Chautauqua, since we're doing a summer program, then you can go to unitychq.org. And if you want to know about Chautauqua, chq.org. And this evening, it is my delight to bring to you one of my favorite ministers that I've had the privilege in the last year to really get to know well. I am from St. Petersburg, and she is from Sarasota, just down the way. This is the Reverend Dr. Suzi Schadle, and she this evening is going to share with us about our topic of this week, which is really expanding the consciousness of who we include in that circle and looking at what's keeping us from doing that. And so I'm going to turn it over to Suzi. And at the end, and by the way, at the end, right now we have everyone muted. You can put questions in the chat area as we go, but we're also going to stop recording at one point, and then we will take all your questions and we'll kind of work through some of the things that Suzi shares. So welcome, Suzi.
Great, thank you. It's great to be here, so thank you, Barbara. Before we get started, Barbara wanted me to show you my t-shirt, so we'll start with that. Let's see if I can get a decent picture. Okay, there you go. There you go. It's got all the spiritual symbols going around. It says praise well with others, so there you have it.
Yeah, and I've already ordered one from her church that I told her my size and everything, and I'm expecting the next time I see her in Florida that I'll have a t-shirt.
There you go. And you get a hold of Barbara and she'll let me know if you want one and what size and all of that. So, I specifically chose to be here this week because it's really all about acknowledging and hopefully healing the divide that exists in this country right now. And so we've been able to hear some really wonderful speakers with brilliant ideas. And so with that in mind, what I had originally hoped was it would have a room full of people where we could really have an interactive thing, but our nasty friend COVID, stepped in and is restricting some of the things we can do, so we're completely online. But I'm going to try toward the end of this, or toward the middle really, to make this more interactive so that we can have some discussion. And so the title of my presentation tonight is The Evolving Role of Faith Communities in a Divided America. And so what we're going to explore through, I'll give you some introduction and then we'll explore through some discussion, is, the various institutions and faith communities, are we being called to evolve out of those traditional roles in American society that we've expected churches or spiritual communities or faith communities to restrict themselves to? Very quickly, I'm pretty sure you'll uncover what my opinion is. At any rate, I want to launch into this, but I will say in preface that I have made available to Barbara all of the materials for this workshop, and really I put together something you could take to your own faith community and actually launch the opportunity to have some dialogue circles around this issue. So I'm sending her everything that would enable you to do that in your own communities, which I think is a really important thing, and it'll include everything you need to do that. So I want to just go ahead and launch into some introductory comments, and then very quickly get to some questions to pose to you to wrestle with and that we can discuss. So I just want to start out with that faith communities, I believe, are really wrestling with this issue and how they can live their faith in an increasingly divided America. And partisan politics are affecting how we interact, how we worship, how we fellowship together, how clergy preach their sermons or talks on Sunday mornings or on Saturdays or whenever they hold service, and how or if we should engage in the public square. And so, the reality is that the political discourse that is going on today impacts spiritual communities, even if we choose to pretend that's not happening. It does. For example, what we've just been living through and what we're living through now, the COVID pandemic. There's been the political divide. It's a hoax. It's real. We wear masks. No, we don't wear masks. Vaccine. No vaccine. Distancing. No distancing. Political polarization over something that really shouldn't have anything to do with politics. So politics is insinuating itself into areas we wouldn't expect it to in the past. And so people bring their whole selves, good, bad, ugly, troubled, whatever, to our faith communities. And so I think we have to deal with the whole person and with the whole reality of life. And, even if we want to stay out of politics and stay out of the political unrest and the political fray, the politics find their way into our faith communities, whether we want them to or not. And sometimes in very devastating ways, from houses of worship being vandalized with swastikas, to arsonists torching them, to gunmen murdering worshipers in their sanctuaries. The attacks on people of faith anywhere are really have serious ramifications for people of faith and worshipers everywhere. And these extreme examples really point out to us how dangerously divided our country is and our communities are. And even faith communities themselves, and you may have noticed that in your own faith community. I have been a long proponent that you, as a minister, do not preach politics from the pulpit. I've been steeped in the idea of the separation of church and state, and I have long said that it is not appropriate to endorse candidates, to tell people who to vote for, to tell them what propositions to vote for. But I do believe it is absolutely appropriate for us to articulate what our faith-based teachings and principles are, and the values that we use to guide ourselves and our communities in our daily life. I think that we can't be Sunday only or Saturday only or Wednesday only people of faith. I think the principles and the values that we espouse are things to be lived 24/7. How many days are there in a year? How many days in a year? I suddenly forgot. 365, whatever. You know what I'm saying. I think politicians, I kind of feel like religion and spirituality are being hijacked by politicians. Politicians are using religion as political tools and that really shows us how the lines between secular and religious have become completely blurred. And faith communities bear some of the responsibility for bridging the great divide and finding common ground upon which we can build a United States of America, that we can build on the unity of humanity. And so too many politicians have not only hijacked faith or spirituality or Christianity or whatever it may be. They use it not only as tools but as weapons at times. And so our faith traditions can offer practical wisdom and guiding principles and core values that can illuminate the way forward for all of us on many of the issues. And we can create a platform to lead us to have the courage and the integrity to stand for those principles and values that we hold dear in our faith communities, but also the principles and values that we have held dear for so long as this country. those principles and values upon which we were founded that we appear to be getting somewhat away from. And so for me, as a minister, remaining silent is not a choice. That is not an option. It is, to me, abdicating the voice that we have and the responsibility that we have. Now, here's the interesting fun fact that Barbara was alluding to that I mentioned the other day. Many of us as ministers or leaders of faith communities have, had drummed into us that separation of church and state. And so we've been very careful and tiptoed around anything that could be remotely construed as political at church. And yet, what I've discovered in preparing for this, the relationship of church and state is set out in the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. And the language clearly says that government is to stay out of the realm of religion. What was interesting, fun fact, and whoa, enlightening, is that the First Amendment does not prohibit the involvement of religion or spirituality in government. And so maybe we have been staying out of the public square for too long, and maybe it's time to step in. This great American experiment has achieved many great things, but there are some serious flaws that have begun to reveal themselves. A nation of laws can produce order, but it cannot produce the compassionate society that can be called the highest and best. And this is where faith communities can play a role in taking our nation to a greatness that can never be achieved by a nation of law that has no compassionate conscience or consciousness. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote, "The church must be reminded that it is not the master or the servant of the state, but rather the conscience of the state. It must be the guide and the critic of the state and never its tool. One of our roles is to be the conscience of the nation and of the world. If the church does not recapture its prophetic zeal, it will become an irrelevant social club without moral or spiritual authority." And I'm talking about all faith communities, not just Christianity or any particular one, but all of us who are of a spiritual bent, whose faith is important to them, I believe are called to step up and be that conscience of our nation and our world. And by contrasting the early church as a force for change and the modern church as so often the arch supporter of the status quo, Dr. King implies that the modern church should be doing more to promote social change. And I think that is very, very true. Another quote I'd like to share with you from Reverend Adam Russell Taylor, who's the executive director of Sojourners. "There is a synergy between spirituality and community engagement to heal and revitalize our democracy in the face of such dangerous levels of polarization. And while we address the dual pandemics of COVID-19 and racial injustice, there is insight and evidence that spirituality provides both fuel and oxygen for social and political change. Spirituality compels people to engage in action and activities tied to creating a better nation and world. As a result, nurturing and deepening spirituality serves as both an antidote to combat civic apathy and disillusionment, as well as a catalyst for community and civic engagement." And so what I'd like to do going forward is to pose some questions. And so we're going to, I guess at this point, we'll cut off the recording and we'll open it up so that we can engage. And I'm going to pose some questions that I would like for us to look at about this theme, the evolving role of faith communities in a divided America, or what is, another way of saying it, what is the evolving role of faith communities in a divided America? And let's collaboratively, easy for me to say, collaboratively wrestle with and dialogue the questions that I will give to you. So give us a moment.